What if the most powerful people aren't driven by ambition, but by the absence of fear? Look closely at how most people live. They hesitate before speaking, they second-guess decisions, they stay silent when they should act, and act only when it feels safe. Not because they lack intelligence, but because something invisible is controlling them. Fear. Fear of losing status, fear of being judged, fear of failure, fear of standing alone. And this fear doesn't just influence people, it programs them. It decides when they speak. It decides what they pursue. It decides how far they're willing to go. So while they believe they are making choices, they are actually following limits. Now, understand this. Power begins where those limits end. Niccolò Machiavelli observed that control is never maintained through strength alone. It is maintained by understanding what moves people and what stops them. And nothing stops people more effectively than fear. This is why most individuals remain predictable. They avoid risk. They protect their image. They wait for permission. But a small number of people operate differently. They are not braver. They are not louder. They are not more emotional. They are simply unaffected. They don't negotiate with fear. They don't manage it. They remove its influence entirely. And when that happens, something changes. Their decisions become clean. Their actions become direct. Their presence becomes difficult to challenge. Because when a person has nothing inside them that can be triggered, there is nothing outside that can control them. This is the dark trait most people misunderstand. It's not aggression. It's not dominance. It's not even intelligence. It is emotional detachment from fear itself. And once that detachment is complete, hesitation disappears. In this video, you'll learn how fear silently shapes behavior, why most people never escape it, and what happens when you eliminate it at the root. You'll see how this one shift changes the way others respond to you, without you needing to force anything. Because power is not about what you show, it's about what cannot be moved. Before we move forward, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I move without fear. Number 1. Kill the illusion of bravery. Embrace emotional death. Most people misunderstand what it means to be fearless. They imagine bold speeches, dramatic risks, or visible confidence. They think courage is something you perform, something others can see and admire. That's the illusion. Because anything that needs to be displayed is still dependent on an audience. And the moment your strength depends on how it looks, it becomes fragile. True power begins where performance ends. The individuals who hold real influence don't try to appear strong. They don't seek recognition for their composure. In fact, most of the time, nothing about them stands out in an obvious way. But internally, something is completely different. They are not negotiating with their emotions. They are not trying to calm themselves down. They are not fighting anxiety. They are not building confidence. They have already crossed a line most people never reach. A state where emotional disturbance no longer dictates behavior. This is what feels like emotional death. Not the loss of awareness, not the absence of intelligence, but the removal of emotional interference. Fear doesn't need to be suppressed, because it doesn't rise with the same intensity anymore. Doubt doesn't need to be managed, because it has lost its authority. And this creates a dangerous advantage, because when a person is no longer internally disrupted, their actions become precise. They don't rush, they don't freeze, they don't overthink, they execute. Niccolò Machiavelli once said, "Men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear." Most people live trapped between these two forces. They want approval, so they hesitate. They fear loss, so they retreat. Their behavior is constantly adjusted to avoid discomfort. But the moment you step outside of that system, control shifts. You are no longer reacting to emotional pressure. You are choosing direction without internal resistance. This is where the illusion of bravery collapses, because bravery still implies the presence of fear. It suggests that something inside you is resisting and you are pushing through it. But the highest level of control is not pushing through. It is no longer being pushed at all. When nothing inside you creates friction, your movement becomes clean. And clean movement is difficult to predict. Others cannot read hesitation in your face. They cannot detect insecurity in your tone. They cannot anticipate your limits, because those limits no longer exist in the same way. This is why emotionally neutral individuals often appear intimidating without trying. There is no visible tension, no need to prove anything, no reaction to provoke. And that absence creates pressure. People around you begin to second-guess themselves. They start adjusting their behavior, not because you said anything, but because they cannot locate your weakness. This is the first shift toward becoming untouchable. You stop participating in emotional games. You stop reacting to invisible triggers. You stop giving others access to your internal state. And once that access is gone, control follows. Drop this affirmation in the comments: I feel nothing. Number 2. Fear is the invisible system controlling everyone. Fear does not always look like panic or weakness. Most of the time it appears as logic. It disguises itself as responsibility, caution, and careful thinking. People believe they are being rational, but in reality, they are obeying an internal system that quietly restricts every move they make. This system operates beneath awareness, shaping behavior long before action happens. It tells someone to stay quiet in a meeting even when they have a better idea. It tells someone to tolerate disrespect instead of risking conflict. It tells someone to follow a path they never chose simply because it feels safer than uncertainty. What makes fear powerful is not its intensity, but its invisibility. When something controls you without being seen, you never think to challenge it. You begin to call it your personality, your preference, your nature. But it is none of those things. It is conditioning. From a young age, people are trained to avoid consequences. They learn that standing out invites judgment, that failure brings embarrassment, and that rejection creates isolation. Over time, these lessons form an internal structure that filters every decision. So when an opportunity appears, the first response is not curiosity or strategy. It is hesitation. Not because the opportunity is wrong, but because it triggers the system. Niccolò Machiavelli once said, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." What he understood is that human behavior is rarely guided by ideals. It is guided by pressure. And fear is the most effective form of pressure because it requires no external force once it is installed. People begin to regulate themselves. They avoid actions before anyone even stops them. They silence their own voice before anyone disagrees. They shrink their own ambition before anyone challenges it. This is how control works at its highest level. No chains, no commands, no visible authority, just internal limitation. When you look at society through this lens, patterns become obvious. You see intelligent individuals accepting weak positions, capable individuals delaying execution, and ambitious individuals lowering their own expectations. Not because they lack ability, but because they are operating inside invisible boundaries. Fear sets those boundaries and then convinces them they are real. The moment you recognize this system, everything changes. You begin to see that most reactions around you are predictable. People avoid what threatens their identity. They protect what makes them feel secure. They follow paths that minimize discomfort. This predictability is what makes them easy to influence. Because if you know what someone fears, you know what controls them. And if you remove that fear from yourself, you step outside the system entirely. Suddenly, decisions are no longer filtered through approval, risk, or perception. They're based on direction and outcome. This is the separation point. The majority continues to operate within limits they cannot see, while a small number move freely without internal restriction. That difference is what creates power. Now, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I see the system. Number 3, eliminate fear completely. Do not manage it. Most advice teaches you to handle anxiety, reduce stress, or build confidence. It sounds practical, but it keeps the root intact. You are still negotiating with something that should not have authority in the first place. As long as fear remains active, it continues to shape your limits. You may feel stronger for a moment, but the boundary is still there, waiting to be triggered under pressure. This is why temporary courage fades. It was never freedom. It was resistance. Real transformation begins when you stop trying to manage fear and decide to remove its influence entirely. That requires a different approach. Instead of asking how to feel better, you question why the reaction exists at all. Most fear is not about physical danger, it is about perception. How you are seen, how you are judged, how you compare. It is tied to identity, not survival. Once you see that clearly, the structure weakens. Niccolò Machiavelli once said, "A man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything must necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good." What he pointed to is the danger of living by approval. When your actions are filtered through how they will be received, you lose control of direction. You begin to shape yourself based on external reaction rather than internal clarity. Eliminating fear starts with cutting that connection. You stop measuring yourself through other people's opinions. You stop adjusting your behavior to protect your image. You stop delaying action to avoid discomfort. This is not recklessness. It is detachment from perception. When the need to be seen in a certain way disappears, hesitation loses its foundation. Decisions become direct because they are no longer filtered through doubt about how they will look. You act based on intention, not interpretation. That shift alone removes a massive amount of internal friction. Another layer to understand is that fear feeds on imagination. It projects outcomes that have not happened and convinces you they are real. You begin to react to scenarios that exist only in your mind. The more you engage with those projections, the stronger they become. The only way to break that loop is to stop entertaining them. Not by suppressing thoughts, but by refusing to assign them authority. You treat imagined outcomes as irrelevant data. You move before your mind finishes constructing excuses. You act without waiting for emotional alignment. This is where most people fail. They wait to feel ready. They wait for certainty. They wait for confidence to arrive before they take action. But readiness is often a delay mechanism. It keeps you inside a controlled state where nothing truly changes. The individual who eliminates fear does the opposite. They act first and allow reality to correct them if needed. They do not seek comfort before movement. They do not pause to protect identity. And because of that, their speed increases while others remain stuck analyzing. Over time, this creates separation. While others are still negotiating with their internal limits, you are already operating beyond them. Your tolerance for discomfort expands, your reactions become minimal, your focus sharpens. At that point, fear is no longer something you fight. it becomes something that no longer fits inside your system. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I act without doubt. Number 4. Crush the need for approval. The need to be liked is one of the most subtle forms of control. It does not feel like weakness. It feels like being reasonable, cooperative, even intelligent. But beneath that surface, it creates a constant dependency. Every decision begins to pass through a filter. How will this be received? How will this affect my image? How will others respond to me after this? That filter slows you down, softens your position, and forces you to adjust yourself in ways that are rarely in your favor. Approval turns people into negotiators of their own identity. Instead of acting from clarity, they begin to edit themselves. They hold back opinions that may create tension. They avoid actions that might attract criticism. They reduce their ambition so it does not threaten others. Over time, this creates a pattern where behavior is shaped more by external reaction than internal direction. Niccolò Machiavelli once said, "Men in general judge more from appearances than from reality." This is why the need for approval is dangerous. When you rely on how others see you, you are relying on something unstable and easily manipulated. Perception changes quickly, and the moment it shifts, your position weakens. To break this pattern, you must remove the importance of being liked, not in a loud or rebellious way, but in a controlled, deliberate shift. You stop explaining yourself when no explanation is required. You stop justifying decisions that are already clear to you. You stop softening your tone to make others comfortable with your direction. This does not mean becoming aggressive. It means becoming precise. You say what needs to be said without adding unnecessary layers. You act when necessary without waiting for agreement. You move forward without checking for permission. When the need for approval is gone, your behavior becomes harder to influence. People cannot guide you through praise, and they cannot slow you down through disapproval. Their reactions lose leverage. Another important shift happens internally. Without the pressure to maintain an image, your thinking becomes more direct. You are no longer splitting attention between your goal and how you appear while pursuing it. That clarity increases speed and accuracy. You make decisions faster because you are not managing perception at the same time. Most individuals remain trapped because approval feels safe. It creates a sense of belonging, and belonging feels like security. But that security comes with a cost. It limits how far you are willing to go and what you are willing to risk. The moment you prioritize acceptance, you begin to operate within boundaries set by others. The powerful operate differently. They do not reject connection, but they do not depend on it. Their direction is self-defined. Their standards are internal. Their movement is not adjusted to maintain comfort in others. As this becomes consistent, your presence changes. You become less predictable. You become less reactive. People begin to sense that their opinion does not control your behavior, and that alone shifts the dynamic. You are no longer someone who needs validation. You become someone who decides. Now I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I seek no approval. Number 5. Train yourself through controlled discomfort. Comfort is not neutral. It conditions you. The more you stay within familiar environments, predictable routines and safe choices, the narrower your operating range becomes. Your tolerance for pressure decreases. Your reactions become more sensitive. Small challenges begin to feel larger than they actually are because your system is no longer used to resistance. This is how fear maintains its position. It does not need to dominate you aggressively. It simply needs you to remain comfortable long enough that anything outside that zone feels threatening. Most people unknowingly reinforce this pattern. They choose ease over growth, familiarity over expansion, and stability over exposure. On the surface, this appears logical, but over time, it builds a dependency. The moment discomfort appears, their system reacts as if something is wrong. That reaction is not truth. It is conditioning. Niccolò Machiavelli once said, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." What separates the two is not intelligence, it is tolerance for discomfort. The wise act early because they are not waiting for perfect conditions. They are not waiting for ease. They move while pressure is present, while uncertainty exists, while resistance is active. Training yourself through controlled discomfort means deliberately stepping into situations that challenge your current limits. Not randomly, not recklessly, but with intention. You expose yourself to environments where your usual reactions would tell you to hesitate. You speak when staying silent would feel safer. You take action when delay would feel more comfortable. You position yourself where your identity is not protected by familiarity. At first, your system will resist. It will attempt to pull you back into what feels normal. It will generate reasons, excuses, and justifications. But each time you move forward anyway, something shifts. The intensity of that resistance begins to decrease. What once felt difficult starts to feel manageable. What once triggered hesitation starts to feel neutral. This is not about becoming fearless instantly. It is about reducing sensitivity through repeated exposure. You do not eliminate fear by thinking differently. You eliminate it by experiencing situations that prove your limits were exaggerated. Each controlled challenge expands your range. Each deliberate action rewires your response. Over time, your baseline changes. Situations that once created tension no longer affect you in the same way. Your reactions become slower, more measured, less emotional. Another effect begins to appear. Your confidence is no longer based on belief, it is based on evidence. You have seen yourself operate under pressure. You have seen yourself move despite uncertainty. That experience replaces doubt with certainty that is grounded in reality. As this process continues, your behavior becomes harder to disrupt. You are no longer dependent on ideal conditions. You can act in unstable environments, under observation, under risk. That flexibility creates strength that others can sense without you needing to display it. Most individuals avoid this path because it requires effort and discomfort without immediate reward. But that is exactly why it works. Few are willing to endure it, which means few develop the capacity it creates. When you train in discomfort, you are not just building tolerance. You are expanding control. You are teaching your system that pressure is not a signal to stop. It is a condition to operate within. Number 6. Detach from outcomes to become untouchable. Attachment is the hidden anchor behind most hesitation. When your identity becomes tied to a specific result, every decision begins to carry weight it should not have. Success feels like validation, failure feels like loss. And because of that connection, your actions become cautious. You start protecting the outcome instead of executing the process. That protection slows you down and introduces doubt. People rarely notice this pattern because it feels natural. They believe caring deeply about results is necessary for performance, but what actually happens is the opposite. The more attached you are, the more pressure you create, and pressure distorts judgment. It causes overthinking, delayed action, and unnecessary adjustment. Niccolò Machiavelli once said, "Fortune is a woman, and if you wish to keep her under, it is necessary to beat and ill-use her." The meaning behind this is not literal aggression, but control over uncertainty. Fortune represents outcomes, things you cannot fully predict. Trying to control them directly creates frustration. Acting decisively without attachment creates advantage. Detachment from outcomes means separating your identity from what happens after you act. You define your role clearly: to decide, to execute, to adapt. You do not define your worth based on how events unfold. When this separation becomes stable, something shifts internally. The weight attached to each decision disappears. You no longer hesitate because there is nothing at stake in terms of identity. You are not trying to prove anything. You are simply moving according to direction. This creates a powerful effect. Your actions become faster and cleaner because they are not filtered through fear of failure. You are able to take calculated risks without internal resistance. You're able to walk away when necessary because you're not emotionally tied to the result. Another advantage appears in how others respond to you. Most individuals operate with visible attachment. They reveal what they want, what they fear losing, and what they are trying to protect. That makes them predictable. It also makes them easy to influence. When someone knows what you need, they can use it against you. But when you are detached, that leverage disappears. You are not desperate for a specific outcome. You are not dependent on a particular reaction. You are not holding on to a single path. This unpredictability creates pressure on others. They cannot read your priorities clearly. They cannot manipulate your expectations. They cannot force you into a position by threatening loss. You become difficult to control because there is nothing obvious to take from you. Detachment also sharpens focus. Without emotional noise around potential outcomes, your attention remains on execution. You see situations as they are, not as you fear they might become. That clarity improves decision-making under pressure. It is important to understand that detachment is not indifference. You still care about direction, progress, and results, but you are not controlled by them. You act with intention, then you allow events to unfold without internal disturbance. Over time, this creates a stable internal state. You are not lifted by success or destabilized by setbacks. You remain consistent. That consistency becomes your advantage. The individual who can accept loss before it happens removes its power entirely. At that point, nothing external can force hesitation. Drop this affirmation in the comments: I release outcomes. Number 7. Ruthlessness, the evolution of fearlessness. When hesitation disappears, something else takes its place. Clarity, not emotional intensity, not aggression, but a sharp, controlled ability to act without internal conflict. This is where fearlessness evolves into something more refined, something most people misunderstand and often avoid. Ruthlessness. The word itself carries a negative image, but in its true form, it has nothing to do with chaos or uncontrolled behavior. It is the discipline of making decisions without emotional interference when those decisions require precision. Most people hesitate at critical moments because they are trying to protect something: an image, a relationship, a sense of comfort. That hesitation creates delay, and delay creates weakness. Not because the situation is lost instantly, but because the opportunity to act cleanly has passed. Niccolò Machiavelli once said, "Injuries ought to be done all at one time, so that being tasted less, they offend less." What he understood is timing. When action is necessary, it must be executed decisively. Prolonged hesitation creates more damage than the action itself. Ruthlessness is the ability to act at the exact moment when action is required, without softening the decision to make it more comfortable. It means removing unnecessary delay. It means avoiding partial moves. It means finishing what needs to be done without internal negotiation. This does not require cruelty. It requires accuracy. You identify what must be done based on direction and outcome, not based on how it feels in the moment. You do not dilute your decisions to maintain emotional balance in others. You do not hesitate because the action might be misunderstood. You act because it is necessary. Another layer to understand is that most individuals operate with hesitation patterns. They wait, they test, they seek reassurance, and then they act only when they feel safe. This creates a predictable rhythm. When someone is predictable, they are easier to anticipate and counter. Ruthlessness breaks that rhythm. Your actions are not delayed by comfort. Your decisions are not adjusted by external reaction. Your execution is not interrupted by doubt. This creates a presence that others cannot easily map. They cannot predict when you will move. They cannot assume you will hesitate. They cannot rely on emotional patterns to understand you. That unpredictability becomes pressure. People begin to adjust their behavior around you, not because you force them, but because they sense that you operate differently. There is no visible gap between your decision and your action, and that absence of delay creates authority. It is also important to understand restraint. Ruthlessness is not constant action, it is controlled application. You do not act unnecessarily. You do not create conflict without reason. You wait when waiting is correct. But when the moment arrives, you do not hesitate. This balance is what separates precision from impulsiveness. Over time, this approach changes how situations unfold around you. Opportunities are handled quickly. Challenges are addressed directly. Unnecessary complications are reduced because you're not allowing them to expand through delay. You become efficient in environments where others create friction. And efficiency, when combined with emotional detachment, creates a form of power that is difficult to challenge. At this stage, fear is no longer part of your system. And without fear, hesitation has no foundation. Now I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I act with precision. Number 8, become the fear others feel. At this stage, the shift is complete. You are no longer focused on removing internal limits. That work is already done. What emerges now is external impact, not through force, not through volume, but through presence. Because when someone operates without hesitation, without visible pressure, and without the need for validation, others begin to respond differently. They become careful. They become observant. They begin to regulate themselves without being told. This is how fear transitions from something that once controlled you into something that now surrounds you. Niccolò Machiavelli once said, "It is much safer to be feared than loved, if one must choose." The meaning is often misunderstood. It is not about intimidation or aggression. It is about stability. Fear creates consistency in how others behave around you because it introduces consequence into their decisions. When your behavior is unpredictable, your reactions are minimal, and your intentions are not easily read. People cannot rely on familiar patterns to understand you, and when people cannot predict you, they begin to adjust. They speak more carefully. They act more deliberately. They avoid unnecessary risk around you. This is not because you are doing anything extreme. It is because you are not doing what they expect. Most individuals reveal themselves quickly. Their emotions are visible. Their intentions are clear. Their limits are easy to identify. That transparency makes them comfortable to engage with, but it also makes them easy to influence. When you remove that transparency, the dynamic changes. You do not over-explain. You do not react immediately. You do not reveal internal states through expression or tone. Silence becomes one of your strongest tools. Not silence as avoidance, but silence as control. You allow space to exist without filling it. You let others speak, adjust, and reveal more than they intended. The absence of your response creates pressure because people naturally try to resolve uncertainty. Another tactic is implication rather than direct statement. Instead of making threats or clear declarations, you allow your actions to suggest consequence. This keeps your position strong without exposing your full intention. It also prevents others from easily countering you because there is nothing explicit to challenge. Your consistency also plays a role. When your behavior remains stable regardless of situation, others cannot use emotional shifts to influence you. They cannot provoke a reaction to gain advantage. They cannot read your state to predict your next move. This stability builds a form of respect that is not based on approval. It is based on caution. And caution creates space. People begin to think twice before acting against you. They measure their words more carefully. They avoid unnecessary conflict because they cannot predict how you will respond. At this point, you are no longer part of the emotional environment around you. You are shaping it, not through force, not through control, but through the absence of weakness. This is the final transformation. You do not feel fear. You do not project fear. You become the factor others consider before they act. And that is where control shifts completely. At the beginning, you were like everyone else, thinking carefully, hesitating under pressure, measuring your actions based on how they might be received. Not because you lacked ability, but because something invisible was shaping your limits. Fear. Now you see it differently. You understand how it controls behavior, how it creates hesitation, how it keeps people predictable, cautious, and easy to influence. And more importantly, you've seen what happens when it disappears. You become detached. You become precise. You become difficult to read and even harder to control. Niccolò Machiavelli built his philosophy on one simple reality. People are not guided by ideals. They are guided by forces. And the one who understands those forces commands the outcome. There are always two paths. The average man lives inside fear. He protects his image, avoids discomfort, and waits for the right moment that never comes. His life is shaped by reaction. The powerful man steps outside of that system. He acts without hesitation, moves without seeking approval, and remains stable regardless of what he gains or loses. His life is shaped by decision. This is the separation. Not talent, not luck, not intelligence, control. And once you reach that level, something changes permanently. You no longer chase validation. You no longer react to pressure. You no longer depend on outcomes. You operate on your own terms. So if this video shifted your perspective even slightly, don't just watch and move on. Hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to see this shift, and subscribe to the channel, because this is where you stop thinking like everyone else and start moving like a strategist. Remember this, when fear dies inside you, something else takes its place. Not chaos, not emotion. Control.